All right, I'm going to get a glossary of terms. I didn't understand a word he said. Did anyone? I don't know. It was a lot of progress. Thank you very much, Doctor. Really an inspiration to all of us and the struggles that we face, and to know that somebody like him is actually understanding what he's doing and making an effort at it in a big way and has been recognized around the world. So thank you very much. I heard this speaker that's coming up next speak a few years ago at a golf tournament. After everybody came off the golf course, we're sitting there having lunch, and I ended up in tears because his story is really something. He's a great speaker. He's a great guy. He's a tireless advocate for pancreatic cancer, and obviously has a very good reason. His daughter is here tonight, Elizabeth O'Connor, has survived pancreatic cancer for more than 5 years. Randy, yep. Randy Dobbs is a highly successful corporate executive, having been the CEO of 3 different companies valued at over $1 billion. He rose over a 30-year career with General Electric to be one of the global company's top corporate officers. He's an author, he's an executive coach, a motivational speaker, and a consultant. But more importantly for us, he's a fellow member of TGen's National Advisory Council for Pancreatic Cancer Research. Would you please welcome to the podium Mr. Randy Dobbs.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you very much. And for all of you, I'd like to thank specifically a couple of people and then many members of the audience. I'd like to thank first Roger. It just keeps getting better and better, Roger. You just keep taking us to new heights. So thank you very much. And then secondly, TGen, because really they're the nucleus that pulls together all these folks around the world, and money from around the world, and organizations from around the world to really drive the teamwork that you heard Dan talk about. And that's really just so critical to this whole activity. And then I'd like to thank many of you in the audience over the course of the last several years. If you've been a contributor to this activity, you're really a part of my family, and I've said in the golf tournaments and I've said in the other chances I've had to speak, I love you. And I hope for those of you who aren't a part of my family yet that you will join that tonight by opening yourselves up and thinking about how you can financially support what Dan talked about. And I'll tell you how important that is. I have 2 heroes, and I'm going to talk about both those heroes. And I have 7 minutes to tell you a 6-year story. And so that's going to be really quick, but I want to tell you first that Dan is my big poppy. And you know, the reason he is, and you'll learn a little bit about this as I go through the story, Elizabeth was fundamentally given a couple of months to live with pancreatic cancer, and Dan came on the scene about 10 months into our fight. And what Dan has said to us, and what he said specifically to me at some of my lowest points is, Randy, all we have to do is get Elizabeth to the next best thing. So all the stuff you heard about from Dan, all the stuff he wants to do, what he's done, he's just getting Elizabeth and other folks in this audience to the next best thing. And he's keeping them alive. And if that isn't the reason to support, I don't care whether you understand the terms or not. You understand that part. And I really appreciate you being here. And it's, look, it's no accident that the auction's coming next. I'm trying to tug at your heartstrings about why this is important. So let me give this presentation real quickly, and I've always heard that a picture was worth 1,000 words. So I'm going to give my presentation in pictures so that if you haven't heard Elizabeth's story, because that's my second hero is my daughter and what she's been able to accomplish with the help of so many people, But this really puts reality behind everything that Dan talked about, everything Roger does, everything T-Gen does, and everything that this betting industry and all the folks in this room do. And I hope that this reality really helps you understand how important all this activity is. So let me start with the first picture. You know, this is supposed to be one of the most blissful and exciting times in your life, a newborn. This is my grandson, Andrew, 7 weeks premature. Elizabeth lost 20 pounds in the 3rd trimester of her pregnancy. Andrew was delivered and went into prenatal intensive care. Elizabeth had a complete hysterectomy, and 2 weeks later, we found out Elizabeth had pancreatic cancer at 31 years old that had metastasized to her ovaries. Now, Elizabeth was given fundamentally by the first oncologist into her hospital room 2 months to live. And there was a reason much greater than just Andrew for Elizabeth to live. There was also Abigail. Abigail and Andrew are just 2 great grandkids, and I'm as proud of them as Dr. Von Hoff is of this. But this is the real reason that we're here. This is the reason that we do this, so that a mother can be with her children and watch them grow, and watch them have life, and watch them have a tomorrow, okay? That's why we're here. So as Elizabeth began the fight, and it's been a long, hard, difficult 6 years. As Elizabeth began this fight, she began the fight with an oncologist in Atlanta, Georgia, and we started with them gemcitabine and oxyplat. By the way, that's her Dr. Von Hoff regimen. He's the guy that started that, and we didn't even know him at that time, but that was the latest and the greatest. The problem with that regimen was you can have neuropathy, and Elizabeth got to the point where she was having difficulty having any feeling in her feet. Well, it was about that same time that we got into the neuropathy that we were able to meet Dr. Von Hoff and get an appointment with him. And he's my big poppy since that appointment. And if you think you've got lost in terms, I've got lost every 3 months with him in terms. Because he's a great whiteboard guy. And he starts in with all the stuff he gave you, and I'm like, yeah, how much money do you need? Let's go raise it, you know? And so that's been the way that I've looked at it, but that's what Elizabeth had to face into. And so as Elizabeth started on gemcitabine and Abraxane, she was one of those 800 people. Elizabeth was one of those 800 people that really had no hope, that started moving her to a different place. But let me tell you, gemcitabine and Abraxane's not an easy regimen. Elizabeth lost all of her hair, Elizabeth lost all of her eyebrows, and you can see that the strength she had for her relationship with Andrew was fundamentally laying on a sofa with him. Tough battle. 14 months of chemo to get her to the point where the pancreatic tumor shrank, and she was able to go through 31 straight days of radiation. And to get to surgery that took 7.5 hours to remove the tumor and reroute most of the rest of her internal intestines and take part of her stomach away from her. But yet Elizabeth got through all of that, and Elizabeth in 2012 was one of 5 people featured in high-intensity cancer situations that were winning the battle. And this is Elizabeth with Andrew and Abigail in 2012 at Stand Up in Cancer. Elizabeth is the only person under the treatment of Dr. Von Hoff, of those 5 that were featured in 2012, that's still alive today. We got through Stand Up for Cancer. We thought things were great. Dan said, hey, look, we got to keep going through the chemo. We got to keep battling the cells now that we've been through the pancreatic cancer treatment. We got through the chemo. We even got to maintenance in chemo in 2013. We got to 2014, and lo and behold, in June of 2014, we go see Dan every 3 months, and we saw some things in the lungs that didn't look good. In 2014, we found that pancreatic cancer had reappeared in Elizabeth's left lung. She underwent surgery and lost 1/3 of her left lung back into chemo. In November of 2014, Elizabeth was having some seizure-type symptoms. We go to Dan again. Nobody could find what we found. Dan looked at the MRIs. Now it wasn't CTs, it was MRI. We found in November of 2014, Elizabeth had pancreatic cancer that had reappeared in the brain. Elizabeth had brain surgery in 2014, introduced to one of the best brain surgeons in the world through Dr. Von Hoff. Elizabeth survived 5-hour brain surgery only to find that she had lost the use of her right leg and her right foot. And Elizabeth had to go through therapy to learn to walk again in terms of just battling the cancer. And here you see her, and I want to make a real point about this photo. This is Maria Fondora. Maria and her husband own an Italian restaurant just outside of Atlanta. She lost her mom to pancreatic cancer. She found out through Michael at TGen and through Roger at Seena Magowitz, and she got introduced to Dr. Von Hoff. She uses her Italian restaurant. She's made Elizabeth an honorary chair, and we have 2 events a year, and this year her target to raise to support Dr. Von Hoff is $200,000 in a little Italian restaurant. There Elizabeth is at the gala. It'd be hard to tell. She's gone through everything I've shared with you. She's back walking. She's back teaching school. She's being a mother. But you know, we go every 3 months. And you heard Dan talk about so many things, but you heard about vitamin D. That's the latest for us. We're going through vitamin D infusions. Everything Dan talked to you about has been the next treatment for Elizabeth. God bless you. I love you. You're keeping my daughter alive. You're keeping my grandkids' mother alive. If that isn't real to you, I don't care what Dan said to you. Believe what I'm telling you, that Dan and everything that we're doing in this room is keeping people alive. People that before, this is a case study. This is a case study that Dan and a couple of other doctors put out in 2012. I want to just read you 2 lines of this case study. This was done about Elizabeth. Pancreatic cancer during pregnancy is a rare phenomenon. In English literature, only 9 cases have been reported. Due to nonspecific signs and symptoms, diagnosis has unfortunately been late. Elizabeth was the 10th woman to be diagnosed with pancreatic cancer during pregnancy. Do you know Elizabeth is the only one of the 10 still alive and still has children that she loves every day? So Dan, the greatest thing that all this money that we raise, the greatest thing that Dan does, the greatest gift that he gives me is birthdays. And this is Elizabeth at her last birthday. Here's what I think about Dan when I think about you. Here's what Dan's doing every day. He's fighting one more round. When his arms get so tired that he can't hardly lift his hands to come up to guard, he fights one more round. When his nose is bleeding, when his eyes are black, when he's so tired he wished that his opponent, that this pancreatic cancer, would just crack him in the jaw and put him to sleep, he just fights one more round. Remember, the man who fights one more round, he's never whipped, and I'm going to be there with you. I don't ever want you whipped. Thank you so much.